morning, Jared.
Good morning.
Third time on the show.
I know.
3 times the charm. I'm going to let you talk today.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a speaking part in today's silent movie.
Well, and I'm not going to talk to you in the third person
Oh, I like
I
that.
did last time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually refer to myself in the third person. People find that very off-putting.
Well, you are a big
Rick
deal.
does. Rick likes.
You are a big deal.
If I ever do that, just shoot me. Push me off a ledge.
I'll quit.
I'll jump off a ledge myself if I ever do that. I would never do that. Oh my gosh. All right. So today we're talking about something that I think is very relevant. It's relevant to our brand, but I think it's relevant to the industry overall. And that is, what does the fitness business need to look like post-COVID, right? And it's really like in a post-COVID world, if you will.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a question that now that we have it's a question that everyone's asking, because now that we have a light at the end of the tunnel, there's something on the horizon, which is the vaccination and herd immunity, and everyone's predicting like spring, midsummer. I mean, depends on where you are, right? With when people's consumer confidence goes up, people are feeling better about getting out. And again, we've reached this herd immunity, and we're starting to see more news stories about that. And so I think it really is a relevant topic right now. It's like, okay, well, what does your business need to look like post-COVID, right? Because it's going to be a little bit different. I think it is. I mean, I hate the word new normal, but in some ways, it's not really a new normal. It's more of how you think of your own business and how you need to align it moving forward. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
So the one thing that I think is interesting that's finally coming out, because and let me take a step back. One of the things that I had some complaints about was from our leadership. We only heard the things that we need to do, to prevent catching the virus, fear-based, right? There wasn't really any actionable steps that were ever spoken about. It was always stay home, stay away from everyone, wear a mask or two, social distance. I mean, just everything, right? That was more like be scared, stay home. And I get it. I really do. I'm not saying that was wrong, but in addition to that, what I would have liked to have heard and would still like to hear from leadership is there are some things that you can do that would at least mitigate some of your risks. And those are health involved. And they're things that are in your control, which would be sleep, exercise, take a vitamin, try to eat relatively well, right? And something around that. Now, understand that that's more of a long play, but we heard nothing about that, right? And when you now are starting to finally see some studies that come out that say things like 78% of people that were hospitalized from COVID were classified as obese, right? Now, before people get triggered and think that we're fat shaming, we're not, I get it. Like, we were operating under the assumption that the things that you were doing that made you obese were okay, right? Now, you can argue that as a fitness professional all that you want, but let's just talk about general views from society, the lens on this. It's like, okay, let's say that I'm in that obese category. Well, I'm operating under this assumption that everything I'm doing is okay, and I know I need to improve and get better, but I'm relatively, air quotes, I'm not, at death's door, right? I'm relatively healthy. Well, along comes this thing, this virus that now makes it obvious to me that I'm not, because of whether it's a medical condition that's causing obesity, lifestyle habits, emotional challenges, psychological, whatever those things are. The fact is I am now at risk from something that's out there, right? And it puts me at much more risk than a segment of the population that doesn't have any pre-existing conditions. That's a fact, regardless of how you got there and how you're going to change that. But at the same time, I get it. We were operating under this assumption that was fine. Now, all of a sudden, this thing comes along and tells you well, it's not fine. Now you could literally die if you catch this virus, right? It's like, okay, great. I think we're at the point now where when we see the light at the end of the tunnel, we can start to have conversations now. It's not, always joke about it's too early, where, not being flippant or discounting the fact that, people died and I feel horrible for the people that did and their families and everything else. And that goes without saying. But I think it's time then to talk about, okay, now that we see a light at the end of the tunnel, what do we need to do? Not only on the consumer side, this would be a message to anybody listening that's, maybe in that position, It's like, okay, now is an opportunity to reflect. You got through this, you made it, whether you caught the virus, were sick or not, and be thankful for that. But now's an opportunity to say, okay, what do I need to do to mitigate my risk and to give myself the best chance, moving forward, not to have something like this happen to me. And then I think what I really want to talk about beyond that is, what do we need to do as fitness professionals, whether it's in the trenches as coaches or trainers or as fitness businesses? How do we need to align ourselves to be in that conversation moving forward?
Yeah. Well, I think as a whole, our office has done a really good job of reflecting on COVID throughout the whole time. We started kind of doing that from the franchise side because when COVID hit, that pretty much put a halt on a lot of things. Understandably so, of course, which gave us a great opportunity to look at what we needed to fix and get better at so that when we got here being post-COVID, we were ready. In the same light, we've done the same thing on the gym. There's a lot of people that don't want to come back to the gym right now, and maybe that's our fault. Maybe that's what we've done wrong by not preparing them before COVID got here.
Well, I know what you're saying. And so I think this is, and I'll try to, let me add to that and tell me if I'm off base of what you're thinking. So the way that I see that and what you're saying is, as an industry, I think we've done a bad job to align ourselves in people's lives as a wellness solution. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
I mean, it's all about the quick fix, right? It's the 6-week fat loss challenge. It's the I burn 1,000 calories an hour. It's smoke and mirrors and microphones and music, right? But it hasn't been, and we do as good a job as anyone, but we still haven't leaned in hard enough, I don't think, which is what you were saying.
Yeah.
But it hasn't been, we aren't viewed as a wellness solution. I think if you went to a doctor and said, hey, certainly personal training would be closely related. But if you went to a doctor and said, hey, what do I need to do to get in shape? Now, let's start with the fact that the medical community isn't always the healthiest, right? So they don't always know either. Right. But at the same time, I don't think they see fitness as a wellness solution, right? They're going to, you're going to need to lose weight, so we need to eat right. Well, duh, we get that, right? You probably should start exercising, right? And all these things protect your cells and keep you from, reduce your chances of catching a virus, as an example. But the industry overall is still stuck in, I think a friend of mine in the industry described it as, sometimes people think of us as like country clubs for people that like to lift heavy shit, right? Which I thought was kind of funny. It's probably a bro answer. But at the same time, that's kind of it, right? Like, we are not seen as essential. That was obvious during COVID from local government shutting us down. We were seen as like an extra, right? Something that people with financial wherewithal and concerned about their looks, right? So it's a place you go to get buff and lose weight and get ready for the beach and all that. But we weren't, I don't think, in the overwhelmingly looked at as a wellness solution. Now, those people that had already experienced it and reached goals that were, life-changing, like, my A1C levels are different and all the things that we hear on the back end, but that's not how we approach the market, right? And I think we need to change that moving forward. And so as a fitness professional moving forward, coming out of this, there's going to be an opportunity to speak to your customer base from a wellness position, more so than ever, more so than like 6-pack abs or, build your butt and these 3 easy steps. I know that still sells, you guys, but like, there's a whole segment, certainly to our population segment, which is upper income, which again drives the age like 40, maybe 50 plus, right? That particular crowd is definitely interested in staying healthy and living a long time. And one way to do that would be, obviously, to lose weight, to reduce all these other risk factors. So I think as an industry, we've done a poor job of aligning ourselves as wellness experts. Is that kind of what you meant?
Absolutely. Well, and you just said it there. A lot of our members are very successful. And they're successful because they're educated. And in the same light, they're going to be successful from a health and wellness standpoint if they're properly educated. And that's, I think, what we need to do a better job. Right. Definitely. People don't know what they don't know. So I'll use my wife as an example. I did last time. And I think it's good. She's a nurse practitioner. She works primarily with women. as an OBGYN, of course. And she started doing nutrition consults for a lot of her patients. That could be for a number of reasons. That could be because they're not in a healthy weight range or body fat percentage, or maybe they're not there and they have a desire to get pregnant. And we know that health and overall body comp can assist in helping you get pregnant. It's not always the determining factor. But one of the most common questions that she gets is, what do I eat? Because I think I eat pretty healthy right now, and I work out 6 times a day. Well, if your focus is on the wrong things, it doesn't matter if you work out 6 times a day if your first meal of the day is...
It's a lot of exercise, I have to say.
It is a lot of exercise. That's more than I'm willing to do at this point.
I don't know anybody that does that.
Yeah, well, and that's... I think that's part of it too. What do you perceive as exercise? And then what do you perceive as healthy? Perception is reality. We know that. So if you think that smashing fruits all day is healthy, well, we know there's a lot of sugar in fruits. You can eat yourself right out of a good workout, even with something that we perceive as a healthy diet, right? So what do we do as fitness professionals?
Vegetarians are losing their minds right now, by the way. Just exploding heads everywhere. But I know what you're saying.
Right. Well, yeah, anything can be overeaten. We know, we talk about that.
Oh, we don't want to go down this nutrition rabbit hole. This could be a never come back from discussion.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like anything can be a bad thing if it's taken out of moderation.
So based on Michelle's assumptions and conversations, people don't know, is what you're saying. They need to be educated.
That's right. And at the end of the day, we are more than trainers. We have to be teachers. We have to give people the tools inside the gym and outside the gym to be successful.
Right. So if you're moving forward as a fitness professional or opening a fitness business, you need to know more than just how to get on a microphone and get people excited about burning a bunch of calories in a workout. I mean, that's great. Like, hey, if people will show up and get their exercise in, I'm all for it. But I will tell you that moving forward, as people start to look at preventative wellness as an actual strategy to keep them healthy, no better time than coming out of this, which put a real big spotlight on it, right, is to say, well, what do we know about sleep and how that affects your health? What do we know about, nutrition in general, like healthy nutrition practices? What do we know about supplementation? Because we're probably not going to get everything we need. Like, obviously, one thing that came out of COVID was vitamin D3, right? Again, overwhelmingly, people that were, in hospital were vitamin D deficient. So it's like, okay, maybe that's something we need to know about, right? And so as you move forward, you need to at least have some working knowledge in each one of these fields, because the brands that simply go to market with like best workout are going to suffer long-term, certainly in the demographic that we're talking about, which just so happens to have 70% of the nation's disposable income, right? So it's a very nice audience for anybody that's in fitness that's looking to build a business, but you're going to have to upskill yourself. You're going to have to understand, cellular integrity, and, you don't have to be a doctor. I mean, I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying you've got to be better than that. And maybe more importantly is you have to really lean into accountability. You have to be an accountability coach. So you have to hold people accountable to more than just showing up and giving them a good workout. Because, I've said this a million times, like, we can go out in the parking lot and do 100 burpees and that gets my heart rate up, and that's a air quotes good workout. But why? Like, why am I doing it? What's the end result? How much should I be doing? Is there a nutrition component to this? Right. Well, how are you going to hold me accountable after the first month when I don't want to do it anymore? Because, it's like I had a thing at work that happened, or my kids got sick and threw me off balance. Right. It's like, that's where a real coach comes into play. And it's something that we've done since 1992. So before COVID, we had already pivoted to this and launched a full-on franchise. We went all in, put our money where our mouth was, and said, okay, the real future is in accountability, coaching, and specificity, right? To be able to work with people if they're a little dinged up, right? Be able to give them something specific, and to be able to manage their health overall through messaging like sleep, nutrition, hydration, all the little things that, by the way, are the things that most affects your health. So I would just say to anybody that's listening, that's new to the industry, this is where you need to go. And if you're, opening a facility, if you're not doing an alloy franchise, which I'm not sure why you wouldn't be, but if you're not, this is where you need to go, right? This is where your messaging needs to be. And you really need to get out of, 1,000 calories an hour, best workout in town. It's a bit of an empty claim, and it's going to fall short to a crowd that's really interested in overall wellness. And we need to be part of that conversation. And the only way to be part of that conversation, honestly, is to be part of that conversation. You have to insert yourself as an expert.
Yeah, and it's not just the director of training or general manager that's holding people accountable. That's got to be the trainers as well. And you can do that pretty simply. For instance, we do the message of the week. So every week we know what we're going to talk about. That could be nutrition. That could be vitamins. That could be, a number of things. That could be our diet. That could be our protein intake. That could be our carb intake. You can go a million different routes for a message of the week.
What I hear what you're saying is systemizing the messaging, right? So what we can do is in our weekly, staff meetings, we can say, okay, this week we're talking about vitamin D3 and how it affects your cellular integrity to help prevent something like COVID. That's what we're talking about this week. And of course, not everybody on your team is going to have the same education as everyone else. But somebody can look up this information and we can pick at least a basic message around it, an awareness, if you will, around the fact that, hey, vitamin D3 is really important for your health. We don't get enough sunlight. We're all indoors all the time, especially if you're in the winter, So here's a great strategy for you. And by the way, we have a really good one on the shelf that's third-party tested and blah, 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 right? It's like, oh, okay, cool. So that's week 1. Week 2 is sleep and how it affects everything from fat loss to hormones to, recovery to, immunology. I mean, all of these things are pretty high level messages, but just through messaging it, a systematic way to do it would be to have your team message each week. They talk to the clients, maybe you do a handout, right? Something like that. But that's how you do it. You just start inserting yourself into these conversations and you go beyond six-pack abs and nice glutes, which, that's a byproduct anyway. Like everybody wants that, but you can do that right?
Right.
And you can talk about that if that makes sense.
Well, those are things we should be doing, but on top of that, it does put another pole in the ground.
Right.
So just more perceived value for us as a business, which is important. That's what you want.
Yeah, that's
you want
true.
People to trust you and to want to come back and want to learn more.
Well, and the things we've always, sort of boasted about, if you will, is that, we have clients that will come to us to say, should I buy a Peloton bike? What do you think about it? Well, that's because they see us as health and fitness experts in their lives, right? We're more than just a workout. And so we would literally be managing what they do in other brands based on what we know about them. And they trust us because we know their injuries, we know their health history, and we know what they like, we know what they don't like. And so if someone came and said, hey, I'm thinking about buying a Peloton, and they had some disc issues, right? And sitting was, offensive activity to those disc issues, we would say, you know what? You're sitting all day at your desk. I'd really rather you do some type of activity that didn't involve you sitting all day, right? Because you're sitting at your desk and then you're going to be sitting on the bike. Like, let's get you on your feet. So let's just walk. Let's start with that. I know it's cold, but great, buy a new jacket instead of a Peloton bike. Let's get you walking 3 days a week in addition to the 2 or 3 days that you're in the gym. Because that gets you upright. We know that greases the groove for your back. It's a lot better for your back health than more sitting. But that's the type of thing, that's how we've inserted ourselves into people's lives. We're going to need to even do more and better job of that. And anybody listening, that's where you need to go coming out of COVID to be a relevant fitness brand moving forward. So I'm really happy that we're already there by default, right? Oh, I'm knocking over my new mic. Whoopsies. That we're already there by default, but we'll need to even double down and do a better job.
Yeah, which is great.
That's it, man. That's all I've got for you. So again, don't get triggered. I'm not fat shaming. The studies are out. It's not, you're putting yourself at higher risk if you've got some issues with weight, regardless of the reason. So if it's medical, try to lean into that. If it's psychological, lean into that. If it's just diet and exercise, find an expert who can help you with both, right? With the lifestyle. And if you're a fitness professional, think about it. How are you aligning yourself in the market? Are you the get buff person? Or are you the person that can really help people get healthy on multifaceted approach? Thanks, man.
Thank you.